Jackie talking a little bit about being raw for how long? Or 90%?
Yeah, 90%. I've transitioned to 90%. Feels great. I
Yeah.
don't know a lot of recipes, but I know how I feel. I know what I want to do. So when I saw raw Columbus and this, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go.
Oh, good.
So it's exciting.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited to have you here. Feel free to speak up because if you've been 90% for that long, then you probably have a lot of tricks up your sleeve. Jeannie, it's brand new to you, right?
Yeah,
Mostly new?
yeah. I'm like 35 to 40%.
30. Yeah, how are you? How crazy that we ran into each other.
Yes.
That's my husband, Mike. He can get you all set up.
Nice to meet you.
So, Jeannie, you're saying?
I'm about 35 to 40% raw. Not on purpose, just I'm eating. I'm vegan, so as I'm vegan longer,
So you're like Jenna, accidental raw.
Yeah.
She'll just grab an apple and throw it in a bag for lunch.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So you might learn some more tricks and
Yes.
maybe decide to experiment with being raw a little bit more on purpose. And Brad?
I have bounced back and forth
Okay.
with my diet for the last few years. I did a 6-month stint of 100% raw
Uh-huh.
a couple of years ago, but I'm definitely not doing that now.
Uh-huh.
And I'm wanting to get back into it.
Okay. Great. So looking for some inspiration and some ideas?
Yeah.
Wonderful. And Jake?
Well, you already know me pretty well. I've never measured my rawness on a percentage scale, but if I kept a food diary and counted it, I'd probably be somewhere between 15 and 20%. But slowly but surely trying to build a healthier lifestyle, and I'm doing a decent job. I'm not going backwards, at least. Once I stop eating something, I usually, I stopped eating fast food a couple years ago now, I don't eat it anymore. Usually once I identify something I want to stop doing, I stop. So over time, I think I'll have a much more raw lifestyle.
So how long has it been since you had fast food?
Except for my moment of Chick-fil-A weakness about 3 weeks ago. I don't think I've eaten fast food for about 1.5 years. And then before that, I had, really it's been about 5 years with about a 1 year period of, a long pickup in between.
Great. And Anna, it's so funny when I saw your name, or I saw Anna on the list, I thought to myself, that couldn't possibly be. And here you walk in, how are you?
I'm good.
It's so good to see you again. So how long have you been into raw and how?
I got a Vitamix Christmas, and so I started to really get into my green smoothies, and then that led me to all these different fun websites, and I just started doing more and more since then.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations. If you've done it, you know how amazing it feels. I have been experimenting with raw. Mike and I started, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we started juice fasting.
Yeah.
Our first juice fast was 57 days. It was a wonderful and heinous and fantastic and horrible and incredible and bizarre experience. And after each juice fast, our diets have taken a little bit of a turn for the better. We started experimenting with raw 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago, I started getting into it a lot more. Mike was still reticent, shall we say. This year is the first year he's really been on board, and our 14-year-old actually did an entire month of raw, but added in cooked rice, cooked eggs, because we have chickens in the backyard and we have to eat those somehow, and cooked fish. And that's probably the biggest testimonial, other than the fact that I feel amazing when I eat raw, is I got my 14-year-old back when she went raw. All of those issues that come with being a teen just seemed to evaporate. She was present again, she was focused, she was not complaining about every little thing. And so it's been amazing for us as a family and the journey that we're on. So today my goal is to show some really easy ways to incorporate it. I'm going to show one basic recipe, and we're going to show you how to turn the same recipe into a salad, a wrap, a soup. The same recipe can be, what else do I have for you? There's one other, and a cheese. So, oh, and a pasta sauce. So all of those from the same basic recipe. And the first one is the salad. I want to make sure everybody knows how to prepare kale. Now this kale is washed and it's sanitized. I used a few drops of hydrogen peroxide, food grade hydrogen peroxide. If you're not using that to sanitize, obviously when you're cooking raw, and just so you know, my hands have been washed several times and dipped in the heavy solution of hydrogen peroxide and the light solution of hydrogen peroxide, food grade. So you need to be even more careful when we're cooking raw because we're not cooking the microbes out of the food. So always caution. But I'm going to pass this around, and if you could take some, since it is organic kale, you'll want to look carefully at the pieces that you take and make sure that there's no slugs on them, since sometimes you find. You're just going to take a small handful and put it in your bag. And right behind that, I'm going to pass around olive oil. If you can just put a little tiny bit, yeah, you probably want to go wash your hands actually, give up. You know that yet? So right behind the olive oil, I'm going to pass around some salt and some pepper. This is Himalayan pink salt, which I've heard everything from amazing health benefits to it's found on the side of the road in India to Italy. You're just going to put a little dash of the oil and a few salt to taste and pepper to taste in your bag, and then we're going to rub it.
Somehow lost my bag. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay.
So just a word about Food Matters, since I'm doing this course at no charge but asking for donations. Does anyone know what Food Matters is or what it does? Food Matters or Local Matters is the actual organization, and Food Matters is the part that I'm most excited about. I've heard of it. Yeah? Has anyone else heard of Local Matters? You can just grab this and pass it to my or several things exactly like that. We're rubbing our kale. Massaging kale breaks down the fibers and makes it digestible virtually immediately. Did you run into Portia? Yeah, I actually want to start wholesaling food through her at our salon. Yes, I have paper towels right here. Anyone else need a paper towel? No? I know, but I didn't. So while we're passing this around, I became familiar with Local Matters in our daughter's first grade classroom when I was really sad at the way a lot of the children were eating. As a matter of fact, I cooked healthy cookies one year when she was in kindergarten, and the kids wouldn't touch them because they were so used to things that didn't taste like real food. Thank you, Mike. So Local Matters is doing amazing things with taking fruits and vegetables and fruit and vegetable education into schools, into inner cities. They have a veggie wagon, and there's actually pamphlets if you guys didn't get one. So, well, the food fee covers, and if you look at Jeannie, she's doing this just right. We're massaging our kale, just breaking down the fibers. So while the food, $15, covers the direct costs to me, or some of the direct costs of that, the donation for the instruction goes directly to Local Matters, and we don't touch a portion of that. So, just wanted to give a little plug there. So if you've ever tried to eat raw kale, has anyone tried to eat raw kale before? You would probably like it, no matter how much you like raw fruits and vegetables. Most people find it a little bit bitter and a little bit overly crunchy and really hard to work at. Whereas when we massage it, it's going to make it a lot more palatable. And I have a lot more if you guys want to experiment with some kale after we're done. And you want to keep massaging until it's about a third of the size. It'll actually reduce, almost like when kale is cooked. It'll actually shrink down. And when it's about a third of the size, you might want to open your bag and take a little taste. You can tell when the taste goes from a little bit of a bitter taste, and I have some uncooked here if anybody wants to taste. Anybody want to take a little piece of uncooked so you can compare? When it goes from this bitter taste to a little bit of a sweeter, more palatable taste, then it's done. And one really nice thing is to make a big bag of this at the beginning of the week, and you can eat on it all week long. Just keep your refrigerator nice and cold because otherwise it'll start to ferment in there, and that has a whole interesting flavor of its own. So go ahead and open your baggie and taste it and see what you think in comparison. See if that's a little bit more palatable for you. While you guys are doing that, I want to get as much out of the salad for you as we can. So what I have blended here, if you have a notebook, you might want to write this down. This is just a veggie base, and really you can make it out of any vegetables you like. I chose for this veggie base cabbage, and I'll give you approximate quantities. Carrot, approximately 1/4 cup of carrot, 1/2 cup of celery, 1/2 clove of garlic, a tablespoon, gosh, it got quiet as everyone started writing down. A tablespoon of jalapeno, a 1/3 cup each of red and yellow pepper, half a cup of green cabbage, 2 tablespoons of white onion, and I'm also going to add a little bit of salt, which is,
What was the cabbage one? I missed that.
that's the biggest quantity of cabbage. I think I put 2 cups, no, 1/2 cup, sorry, green cabbage. I multiplied the recipe by 4 for you guys. Does anyone know where my salt ended up?
Salt right behind you.
Thank you. So a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, gonna eyeball this, and pepper to taste. Now right here, it's a pretty palatable, like you want to pass out some of these. And this mix. So right now it's palatable. Not yet. What I'm gonna do is show several different treatments of this, and we'll be doing fun different things with all of it. So this is just the base. Has everyone tasted your kale salad? What do you think?
It is not, it's better.
It takes some of that oil, takes a little bit of that salt. Did anyone else taste it? Is anyone still not very tasty? If so, you can massage it a little bit longer if you want to. Okay, so we're going to divide this base into 3 different mixes. We're going to do an Italian, a Mexican, what else do I have for you today? And an Asian inspired, all with the same base. So did everyone get the ingredients for the base? Great. So we've got some kale in there, which doesn't hurt it at all, but it can turn it kind of green since we're going to do the cheese in here. So we're going to put a 1/3 in here for the cheese.
Is that all grated?
Yeah, it's just pulsed in a food processor. When we got here, it took us a little bit longer to get this room ready than we expected, so Jindal helped me set up. It was like 8 minutes to chop and put in there after it was all washed. So it's really, I mean, I'm not kidding when I say if we eat raw, it has to be quick and easy because with a family and several businesses, we just do not have the time to make a long, although I do love to do the long drawn out prayers when we do have the time. So I'm dividing these. Now, does anyone want to try a basic salad topping? That would be just taking this, mixing some balsamic vinegar and oil and some seasonings with it and eating it on some cake. That's basic. We can just skip that if you want to. Does anyone want to try
Using that to make the salad dressing?
using a little bit of the base?
Oh,
Do you want to try it?
sure.
I'll
you're gonna make a salad dressing out of the vegetables.
We could make a dressing. When I say dressing, what I'm referring to is a topping, really, for the salad. I like to have kind of a soupy, delicious, tasty topping. So as an example, and this is just, I mean, think of your basic balsamic, which depending on your balsamic may not be raw. So you take shortcuts here and there. Just a little balsamic. And the olive oil over here. Mike, could you give me some of the plastic spoons? So if you want to put a little kale on your plate and then pass this around, you can just put a little tiny bit, and instead of just putting a dressing on your salad, then it gives you a little salad topping. I need to take a second. Just a little bit goes a long way. So I can pass that around. So that's a basic salad topping. So maybe you make this before the day starts. At lunch, you add that, throw it on a salad, and you've got a salad topping. For dinner, or maybe also a lunch, let's look at creating a wrap. Has anyone done a collard wrap ever? Jackie, you probably done the most wrong.
I have, playing around and trying to forward, but not knowing what I was doing.
Okay.
I ended up on
Okay. Well, we're gonna do our collard wrap, Asian inspired. And the Asian is one of the easiest ways to season things in my mind, because I came up with a simple 4-3-2-1 way to remember how to season anything Asian. So all you're gonna take is you're gonna take your 4 parts of sesame oil, obviously raw sesame oil. Now a lot of people will say that the toasted sesame oil gives so much more flavor that it's worth doing the toasted. And I've lost my measuring spoons for there. But there are others that say that the toasting of the oil makes the fats rancid and unhealthful, and so I just prefer using the raw, personally. So we're going to take 4 tablespoons, and this is just 4 parts. 2, 3, 4 tablespoons of the sesame oil, 3 tablespoons of the rice vinegar.
Kind of vinegar?
Rice vinegar. It's a fermented, and you can, it's one of those items that you can get, once again, all different variations health-wise. You can pay much more. I just have Trader Joe's here. Then we've got 2 tablespoons of miso. My new favorite salt seasoning. Does everyone have miso at home? Oh, it's just fantastic. If anybody wants, does everyone have a clean spoon? Yeah, here, I'll use this spoon and I'll give everyone who wants some taste a little bit. Do you want some? Okay, what's that? Yeah, so, I'll also scoop a little rice in here. Those 2 parts of it. Have you had it before? Yes, and you'll try some.
Yeah.
That's the right answer. Do you want to try some, Anna? It's wonderful stuff, and you can see when you taste this, and it's incredibly helpful, again, depending on who
There's
you
different types of miso. Correct.
There's white, there's brown, and it depends on what it's made out of. It's usually made of soybeans, but you can get it made of other things. Try some of that. But essentially, when I cook raw, I have my basic things that are sweet, things that are salty, things that are sour, things that are acidic. And you can just use them interchangeably.
2 parts miso.
2 parts miso. And then 1 part tamari. And of course, some people may prefer the namashoyu. Other people say that will kill you. Some people say bragg's aminos. Others say that will kill you. What I try to do is just do not too much of any one of them. So, going back to the moderation in all things, just trying not to have too much of any one thing. Now, if I were doing this at home, it would be much easier because I would have just put these ingredients in the food processor right after I blended up the ingredients. And so I wouldn't even be having to stir right now. So it would be that much easier. And I'm going to take these over here so I can take these, make sure it's exactly right. A little bit more vegetables. And I recommend, because this is kind of strong, because we want to make it strong for our wraps, I recommend that you try it on your kale because this would be a second salad right here. And the next thing we're going to do with this is make a collard wrap out of it. And I apologize if you get a chunk of miso, or I don't, lucky you if you get a chunk of miso. But normally, obviously, if you're blending it up, that wouldn't happen. All right, so next, we're gonna make our collard wrap. And just like at home, I need 3 times the space I have here. So all we need to do is take a nice big collard. And part of this is from the fact that being on the go a lot, I struggled with how do you, pre-raw I would make a sandwich. And if I'm doing a day, which sometimes I don't eat raw, oftentimes I'll eat raw first and then follow it with any cooked food I'm eating so that I'm getting the benefits of the raw food first. But one thing I really struggled with was, well, how do I make things and take them with me? So I've got these to pass around so everyone can try, but we're going to do the same thing we just did. By the way, this is fantastic with some sesame seeds in it. It just sets it off. Raw sesame seeds are wonderful. So we're just going to take about 2 tablespoons of the mixture, whatever mixture. I made this yesterday with Italian, the same Italian flavoring we're going to have today. I find it easiest if you fold in the thinner side, so the natural side of the leaf. So you fold it in just like a burrito. And easy to wrap up, take with you anywhere you want to go. Now what I do recommend, if you can eat it somewhere over a plate, then you can do it like this. You can't eat it over a plate. If you're going to be in the car, for example, I recommend some dehydrated, you sprout some almonds, I'm sorry, not sprout them, germinate some almonds, then dehydrate them, and then grind it into a meal. So that'll give you a flour-like consistency, and if you mix some of that into this after you add the miso-flavored, Asian-flavored dressing, then it will be thicker, and it'll keep it from dripping on you. It will have a much more substantial consistency.
Hold on, is germination right before the sprout? Like just a couple days?
When I say germination, I'm saying I've just soaked it. Like for example, the seeds, nuts we're using today, soaked for 2 hours.
Oh.
Usually, I believe germination, depending on what kind of seed or nut, can happen as soon as half an hour. And I believe that half an hour, and again, I've been reading lots of sources. I believe that half an hour is what it takes to remove most of the enzymes that were not enzymes. What are the components that we want to get rid of in the nuts? Jackie? No idea? So they're the components that protect the nuts and keep them from being readily digestible and readily accessible. So 30 minutes is the base. That's what I soak for everything for. Okay, so let's try this. I'm gonna pass around the collards. So did everyone see how we do that? Just rip it, you're gonna rip it down the side, rip it down the other side, and that'll give you enough for 2 wraps. Let me see if I have enough collards for everyone. And once again, these have been washed, they've been sanitized in the hydrogen peroxide solution, but they could still have some kind of bug somehow growing on them.
What is, so if you have, like, if you're working in your sink and you have a big bowl, how much hydrogen peroxide do you add to your water?
I never use my sink just because I'm crazy. I always use a bowl of some type.
Well, yeah, a bowl in the sink.
Yeah, and it depends on if it's diluted or not. If it's this is 35% solution. It will literally, I've burned my fingers with it before, so just a couple drops.
Oh.
But if you've already diluted it, it's 1 part of this to 11 parts. Then you've got a 3% solution.
Okay.
And then you can probably add about a 1/2 cup. You can go online and get exact figures.
Okay.
I'm a little more by gosh and by golly than I should be to
Okay.
be teaching. That's one of the most difficult things for me about teaching this class is I do everything without measuring. So, 7, 8.
And where do does Restaurant Supply have a 35% solution?
You can get it online or you can get it at Millennium. Is that what it's called?
Momentum.
Or Momentum. Thank you.
Yeah, right on High Street.
I'm going to pass out
Downtown
1 collar
Pueblo.
for 2 people. Or actually, I've got enough for, this is a small one, so I don't have to take your own. You guys can practice wrapping.
Still need to
Yeah.
rip it away from the stem.
If you can figure out a way to fold it with the stem still on it, then you're a better person than I am. I would love to be able to get huge wraps, but I've only ever figured out a way to get half wraps. And I'll come around once again with the toppings. So when someone has one ready, let me know. Bigger plates next time.
Yeah.
Look at you. I flip it personally upside down.
Alright.
Only because the leaf seems to want to curl this way and it makes it easier. So when I do it, I'm using half so you can experiment with wrapping types and see or wrapping solutions. I will make a note to have bigger plates next time, guys. I will have 2 out of this. Watch the tables too. Alright, I'll come back and give you some more after you get it. Now you can see how drippy this is. You guys can see why adding the almond meal helps if you're going to be doing anything. And then the next class I'll be talking about how I organize all of those strange ingredients. I'm going to put this here. The table one. Let's see how that's the one you do. Like I said, I put that really well. Okay, yeah. We're glad to have you. I'm sorry that there's some information you missed. I don't know if Mike went to grab. Did he say anything to you?
He said he was going to share.
Oh, good. I'm giving you guys these because it looks like we need some space.
They had a class for last week.
Workshop? I know. I wish I had made it. I wanted to come. So as I was saying, the next class I'll be talking about how I organize all of those strange ingredients that didn't fit into my kitchen when I first started cooking raw, and how you keep the unadulterated almonds from the germinated almonds, from the germinated dehydrated almonds, and the almond meal, and so forth. We'll be covering that a little bit more because we'll be talking about dehydrating. We'll be making crackers next week, and then the following week it's desserts. So next week is on the go. This is the only real on the go item that we're doing this week. How do you guys like it? Tasty?
That's good.
Good. You can imagine sesame seeds would make it a little bit nicer.
Richer.
And the almond meal really makes it a lot more substantial as well.
Elizabeth, sorry to interrupt you.
No, I know I'm going really
No,
fast.
I like to ask a lot of questions. You use a lot of, it's so far in the base, so you're using olive oil. Would you like to also use cashews as
Yeah.
your fat?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even put
I have a
cashews.
nice cheeselicious recipe with just cashews, and instead of olive oil, I just wondered what your thought was on that.
Well, the olive oil I brought for the kale and also for the Italian treatment we'll be doing. I
Okay.
brought sesame oil for the Asian treatment, and I brought sunflower seed oil for the Mexican flavoring that we'll be doing.
Awesome.
But if I had it, I would have brought avocado oil for that. So for me, the oil depends on the purpose.
But you ever not use oil and
Use
mix
nuts. I don't.
nuts or avocado?
For me, those serve two totally different purposes, but absolutely. I have nuts here today to mix into the mix when we turn it into a cheese. I use nuts. In my mind, nuts replace cream and milk.
Okay.
So even though they are substantially a very high percentage oil, still in my mind, what they're adding to the recipe is when I blend nuts into things, they're making that creamy
Yeah.
texture, that creamy consistency.
Okay.
Great. So are there any questions before we move on? Are there any questions? Now, each treatment that I use, the Asian treatment, for example, we're doing in the wraps, but you could do the Italian treatment that we're doing in a wrap as well. You could do the Mexican treatment that we'll be doing in a wrap as well. So we're doing different flavorings, different seasonings, and different treatments, and you can mix them however you like in your own kitchen. And that's where we get the variety. I mean, really when it boils down to it, I'm realizing that raw is really a lot of fruits and vegetables blended, chopped, or pureed and mixed up in different ways. So the treatment comes with the spices and the texture and the visual differences is really what gives us the variety that we desire. So moving on, let's go ahead to the Mexican. And with the Mexican, I'm going to do a cheese. This would be a nacho cheese. I like to spell this N-O-T-C-H-O. Cheese, get it? I just lift my fingers, so I'm dipping them in the sanitizer. Yeah, I have it. No, don't put that in there. I need more bowls, guys. This just has the balls on it, so we're doing it. So the reason I'm wanting to clean this out is because I want to make this one for you from scratch. I want to show you guys how easy it is to make the base. Now, of course it's easy because we pre-prep the vegetables, but as you can see, this is just the scraps from the spaghetti that we made earlier from the squash. So that didn't really take any extra time. These, all we did was wash them and chunk them, slapped the end off of the cabbage. I just scraped my carrots, that's why they're a little bit brown. I don't even peel them. And then some celery, all we did was cut off the ends. And that's about it. We've got some garlic, a little bit of garlic here, and some onion. So, yes, there is a little bit of prep time involved, but it's nothing like what you're seeing when you're reading some of the raw cookbooks. And I mean, I've spent days making raw recipes before. So we're talking about accessible. So all we're gonna do is throw in the cabbage, the peppers, the squash, and these are kind of measured. If does anyone else cook that way? The carrots and the celery. I'm gonna throw the onion. That's the oregano.
Oh, you're adding vegetables from from the ones you used in your basic mix.
Yeah, I'm just demonstrating how to make the base. I wanted you
Okay.
guys to see how easy it is.
Okay.
So I'm just pulsing. I'm going to stir. And I'm going to save these for later just in case they're a little big. And it's just base chunky at first, but we're gonna blend it all up because the next thing we're making is a cheese anyway. So for our cheese, what I'm gonna add to this, and my go-tos for when I do a Mexican treatment, are either a sunflower seed or an avocado oil. And I'm just gonna show you guys how I do this, which is, my mom used to call this by gosh and by golly. And then some lime juice that Jen Delay already juiced for us. And then I'm gonna do some cumin, some chili powder, and some garlic powder, which if you go to the different ethnic stores, you can find spices so much less expensively. Whoa. So I'm going to put some chili powder, and for those of you who like recipes, I did actually go through at home and get exact recipes or exact amounts. I did, and what seemed to work was 1 part avocado oil, 1 part lime juice, 1/4 part salt. No, that's not correct. Sorry, I did 1 tablespoon olive oil. This isn't in parts. 1 tablespoon lime juice and a 1/4 teaspoon salt. The chili, the onion powder, and again, in a perfect world, I would dehydrate my own onions, I would dehydrate my own garlic, and I would grind it, and it would be my own dehydrated. This isn't a perfect world, these are both purchased. The cumin seed. And then does anyone have any problem digesting tomatoes? No? Okay, these are already washed, so I'm going to put the rest of the tomato in there. This is going to make a nacho cheese. One thing, and that's not, I know this is you, Joe. Anna, do you have a question?
No, I did. I can't, I'm not going to try.
Oh, and I forgot my, the nuts. That's what gives it the creamy consistency. I was looking at that saying, no.
What kind of nuts?
I have soaked almonds, which is my favorite nut. That's not quite, could you do double those quantities for me?
Yeah.
Or just bring me the nuts for me?
Sorry.
Where, behind me?
Over here now.
But no yeast, Elizabeth?
Yep.
No yeast, nutritional yeast.
I'm using that in the, because I like that when I do the Italian. Because for me, that's like Parmesan.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
you can certainly put it in there.
No, I was.
It gives kind of a meatier texture. I use that when I do my faux meats for taco seasoning, for example. But yes, it's good stuff. I'm gonna put, I didn't like the amount of nuts that I had pulled aside for this, so I'm doing a little bit more of each. Once again, just the soaked cashews and the soaked almonds. I'd probably let this go a little bit farther. But in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and try this now. And I knew it was going to need salt. So, I do have chips for those of you who aren't curious and want to eat the nacho cheese on chips. And for anyone else, does anyone want a cabbage leaf instead of a chip to try it on? Adding some of this. And from tasting it, I can tell you it needs a little bit more cumin. So who'd like cabbage leaves? Who wants chips? Chips. Okay, I'll just pass those around.
I haven't made it like that.
And I have extra plates.
Who needs a new plate? Because yours is soaked with other stuff? Or would like another plate? Anybody else?
Alright. So this is a very mild version of what I would make. I say mild because I like a lot of spice, but when you have to be a little bit safe, not knowing anybody's preferences. I would probably add quite a bit of garlic. Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
And even some more, oh, sorry, even more cumin to this. And then I do have some cilantro that my hope is to wrap up at about 7 and experiment with things. And so we can take this and throw this back in with some extra spices, and I do have 2 more jalapenos if anybody wants to try it really spicy. Yeah, and we can throw some cilantro in here too. Once again, if you want to make it into a wrap with the collard, what do you throw in?
The almond.
Your almond meal to soak up all of that extra juice. So any questions about the Mexican treatment?
Great.
You like it? Okay. All good? No questions? All right, let's move on.
We're all busy eating.
Yeah, this is perfect because you guys can't criticize anything I'm doing. What you need?
I have a question for that for.
Oh, are we on napkins time?
I like to go as low as I can with the oil. Can you experiment with going, like, I will not take away, do experiment going.
I wouldn't go low with oil. I get as much oil as I can, as long as it's good oil, as long as it's healthy cold pressed oil,
Well, yeah,
then
I don't like eating a lot, but then again, I can probably eat a lot of nuts on the collards.
I mean, you can certainly experiment. I'm just, I think
It works for you.
I try to get as much healthy oils, as many healthy oils as I can in my diet. So I've never really tried.
Okay.
All right, are we ready for Italian? Yeah. So for this one, we're gonna make a pasta sauce. So we need our trusty Vitamix. And is this stuff starting to look familiar? So we're gonna take some of the same stuff. And this time, since we're doing an Italian treatment, our oil is gonna be some olive oil. And once again, I have some quantities for you guys later if you want those. We need our basil. And I already washed that, but I'm gonna kind of give it a little bit of a scan as I'm going through here, make sure it looks perfect.
You always sit still.
We have chickens. So I do just because I love knowing that our chickens are going to eat the basil and that's going to flavor the eggs, however subtly. And this is oxidized. So I don't like some people might avoid some things. I avoid anything that's oxidized, like the plague. So anything that's starting to turn brown, I just don't want it. So I know most people would just take this and throw it in. And I know that's probably pretty typical, but sorry. So way ahead, maybe see those leaves are a little bit oxidized, chickens get them. We have really happy chickens.
Not bad.
Really happy chickens. All right, so, and then again, since it's an Italian treatment, we're gonna use the balsamic. If you're a purist, you may want to use apple cider vinegar instead. Another thing, it would be hard to get too much of that into a diet. So some other things I use for the Italian treatment are the nutritional yeast. particular taste, and not everybody likes it, but I'd like to experiment with some fennel in it. We went, when our daughter was raw, we went to an Italian restaurant and pretty much just told the chef, just make a plate of raw vegetables. There are Italian vegetables that I just don't even eat. They were all thinly sliced and marinated, and it was just marvelous, and fennel was one of them. So I haven't used it yet, but I'm very excited to. Salt, again. And I have some oregano right here. With or without the tomato. I'm going to do this without tomato right now, but we can go back after the class and experiment and add some tomato to it. So, looking for the lid to wet mix. Anyone has one of these? You know you don't want that. That's not it. That's the spiralizer. You know you don't want to use a Vitamix without the lid, right?
It's a nice short container too.
I just got it and I love it.
I like that one.
Oh, thank you. It's supposed to fit under the counter, but wouldn't you know, I finally got it. I've wanted it for years. Because I've had this Vitamix for almost 20 years. So I finally got it, and it still doesn't fit under my particular counter. Darn it. So I'm turning to variable since this is not going down. And if I need to, I'll use my truck. And then once again, to add the creamy consistency, I need the nuts. From what I have read and learned, I find, even though I really enjoyed the cashews maybe a little bit more, I find the almonds to be